engineer is not just seen as solving a small piece of a puzzle, larger puzzle, but can actually think about building products and eventually create possibilities for a startup.
Today I have with me Dr. Sudhir Varadarajan from IIITDM in Kancheepuram.
If a student lacks knowledge and skills, then what is your academic process doing?
What was the journey? This is a complete 4-year program. What did you do in the first semester, second, third, fourth?
One of the earliest courses in the third semester, which is called a Systems Thinking for Design. So in this course, we essentially encourage students to identify problems. Nobody teaches problem discovery. So this is what we used to do in that course. You are coming to a class and you are being sent outside the class to go and observe small things in the campus.
And how do you evaluate students for this course?
A 60-40 model where 60% is given for this explorative process and then 40% is treated as a typical end semester exam.
How do you prepare yourself?
The faculty needs to spend a lot of time both in terms of listening, discussing, validating with students, and faculty may not have an understanding of all the domains.
The philosophy behind this is to encourage the students to go crazy thinking about the idea, be creative, and the faculty really has to facilitate that process rather than blocking them saying no.
So at the end of 6th semester, is there something in this to take it forward? Is there a business validation for this? Is there a technical validation for this? Is there a user validation for this? We had a 4% conversion of students becoming entrepreneurs at the time of graduation.
Hello and welcome to everyone. We are back at River University for Guest India podcast, and today I have with me a very interesting personality. He's an academic. He was a corporate professional who turned into an author and then an academic. I better think of him as an innovator, as a designer of changing the mindset of students, and he's taken some very interesting initiatives in reinventing, in reimagining education with a viewpoint of altering some micro behaviors which help students learn better, think more innovatively, and most likely nudge them towards entrepreneurship. I have with me Dr. Sudhir Varadarajan from IIITDM in Kancheepuram. Or IIITDM Kancheepuram, not necessarily in Kancheepuram is what I've learned. Dr. Sudhir, thank you very much for joining me for this conversation, and welcome to Guest India podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Puran Singh. Happy to be here in this podcast, and a nice opportunity to discuss about the student entrepreneurship and so on.
Thank you. So, my introduction to Dr. Sudhir has been very recent, and sir, what I have learned from our interaction so far, the most intriguing thing for me has been the design of activities in the class to encourage students to think about, interacting with material, how things work, designing them in a better way, and giving a nudge to the students, right? The work that you have done there, I through this conversation, I really want to focus on entrepreneurship education, engineering education, embedding the design spine, as you say it. The very first conversation, let me open with what is this design spine? Let's talk about design spine.
Okay. So design spine is not, the word is coined, I think, by the India Design Council. In 2014, they brought out a report called Design Spine for NITs, right? So where the intent was to build this product design and this kind of orientation in a typical engineering program. I don't know how far it was implemented in the NITs, but around the same time, IIITDM Kancheepuram also launched what is called a Design-Centric engineering program. So the idea was to have a set of design and management courses embedded as part of an engineering program. So I think in 2014, when they launched this program, they had almost like 15 to 17% of the credits dedicated to that. So it is like almost every semester, the students, all students across all branches, they do at least one course in product design and one course in management for all the 8 semesters. So when I joined this institute in 2015 as a visiting faculty, and I found that instead of just delivering one course in isolation, there may be an opportunity to actually use these courses as a scaffold where students can develop an idea over the semesters.
Okay.
Right, instead of seeing each course as an isolated piece, which typically happens in an academic program, there may be an opportunity to start with an idea in one semester, refine it in the next, improvise it further, and then maybe build a proof of concept, then see where it goes, right? So they can actually take that kind of journey, and that is what we try to bring as a kind of a vertical integration into the program. So initially I had to do some of these courses and make those connections, and later some like-minded faculty and others were brought in to support that process. So then when we saw that this 5 to 6 courses, if people are taking an idea and nurturing it and refining it into a kind of a proof of concept at the end of 6th semester, there are few things which started happening. One is a lot of students started getting exposure to a fairly uncertain process of defining a problem, right? Discovering a need and then translating it into a problem statement and going through that whole journey. And in cases where they get an external validation at the end of every semester, and also some of these ideas start taking shape in terms of proof of concepts and others, then the probability that students, one is their learning is definitely becoming a lot more deeper. Second is there is a probability some of these ideas can also trigger greater interest in the student to carry it forward. So this is where when we kept doing this for about 5-6 years, we could see some pattern emerging from this. And one of the things we noticed was with the 2021 outgoing batch, we had a 4% conversion of students becoming entrepreneurs at the time of graduation. So this is what is we felt like a design spine emerging among engineers.
Okay.
Where engineer is not just seen as solving a small piece of a puzzle, larger puzzle, but I can actually think about building products and eventually create possibilities for a startup.
So then you're saying in the and let's talk in more detail about the specific course that you ran, where you earlier mentioned 21 students, out of them 3 students, 4 students.
No, in the 2021 batch, about 4% of students. It's a class of say 240.
Oh, I see.
2 batches of 120 each. And roughly about 9 students came out of that who became co-founders of companies. So about 4 or 5 companies were set up by them.
Okay. So design spine, as I understand it from this conversation, we are saying only an engineering program would teach students engineering, but they need to have a sense of design. And through consistent interventions during their coursework, right from the beginning, from the first semester, you introduce them to design, you get them to design and get them to build something which really creates one essential component of becoming a successful engineer, innovator, entrepreneur, whatsoever it is. The string of those courses can then be called a design spine for the great. So let us there are a lot of threads I want to pick up, the broad context. But let us talk about this program first. Then I'll go back into your corporate experience and the book, which is called Managing Nothing. I want to learn about that. But let us deep dive into 9 students out of 240 becoming an entrepreneur. What was the journey? This is a complete 4-year program. What did you do in the first semester, second, third, fourth, and then eventually 9 students raise their hand and say we will become co-founders?
Yeah. So for example, one of the earliest courses in the 3rd semester, which is called a Systems Thinking for Design. So in this course, we essentially encourage students to identify problems.
Is this the first intervention?
Yeah. So this is where I was directly involved in that
Okay.
third semester course. So this is where I started.
Mhm.
There are 2 courses in the first and the second semester also, but we didn't start there. We actually started in the third semester.
Okay.
So in that course, when we started running that course, I used to handle that course in the almost 6-7 years. Right?
Mhm.
So that course we used to use it more for need and a problem identification,
Mhm.
right? Because systems thinking essentially is an ability to look at a wider context and discover deeper patterns within that. So we use that course to say, instead of just learning those concepts, can you also parallelly identify an area of interest?
Hmm.
So whatever is your area of interest, we used to conduct small activities like, for example, even to discover that area of interest, we used to tell students like each person can pick 2 areas of interest to him at that stage,
Mhm.
right, when they are in the third semester. So somebody may say, I want to work in transportation. Somebody may say, I want to work in medical devices or healthcare, something
Okay.
like that. Then we ask them to talk to 6 other students.
Okay.
So each one has, say, a choice of top 2 areas that he wants to work on.
Hmm.
It could be an idea, it could be a problem, it could be a domain, whatever it is. Then we say you go and talk to another student in the class whom you have not met,
Mhm.
right? And then you listen to them, you share your ideas, you listen to them. At the end of the conversation, you can decide whether you want to retain your ideas, whether you want to combine with his idea, or you have discovered a third idea.
Okay.
So then you come up with your top 2 ideas at the end of first conversation,
Hmm.
right? Like that, you go and meet at least 6 people. At the end of 6 iterations, then we ask them to list out what are their top first idea or first area of interest.
Hmm.
And then we say you form groups based on similarity of intent.
Hmm.
So if somebody says, I want to work in waste management, and he has found 5 other people also converging towards that,
Mhm.
then you potentially see whether you collectively want to form a group
Hmm.
and work on that topic during this semester,
Hmm.
right? So, but we also add a commitment, can you stay with this topic for next 3 semesters if possible,
Okay.
right? And then we take them through the discovery process.
Hmm.
Suppose I say I am interested in transportation. How do I discover what are the issues in transportation?
Hmm.
So can you pick up what is happening around you,
Mhm.
your own observations, your personal experiences? Can you look at some newspaper articles, what is happening? Can you look at some of the literature around you in terms of what is happening? And then based on all this, can you arrive at, say, a small document saying, this is what I understood about the issues in this domain,
Okay.
right? Then there is a systems modeling process
Okay.
where you identify the stakeholders, needs, and all that. So they go through that process, apply those concepts to refine their understanding.
Mhm.
And at the end of it, they reach towards a kind of a more refined problem statement.
Okay.
So this is the process we take them through. So normally when you compare this with a, any other education process, nobody teaches problem discovery,
Hmm. Okay.
right? So this is what we used to do in that course.
And this is only the first semester,
In the
third
third
semester,
semester.
one semester. And in this semester, in the course called Systems Thinking, you are only helping student groups identify, discover a problem, and then study it.
Study it, and at the end of it, we say, can you come up with a one interesting concept for this problem as a solution,
Okay.
right? In whatever way you have defined the problem, come up with one interesting, innovative concept through which you can resolve it. And then can you develop a small mock-up for that
Okay.
or a poster for that, and then display it at the end of the semester, where we invite
I see.
people from outside. We started a event called Ehi-Passiko.
Repeat.
Ehi-Passiko.
Ehi-Passiko.
It is a Pali word,
Okay.
which is essentially says, come and see.
Come and see.
Right. So it is a Buddhist philosophy saying you don't have to accept whatever I say.
I see.
You come and see for yourself.
Okay.
Right. So we started a small event like that at the end of the semester, where we used to invite other students, other faculty, and initially started with a few people from industry. Then slowly that expanded. Every year it kept expanding and so on.
Okay.
So when the students present this to an external audience and also to their peers,
Yeah.
right? So you will see things like sometimes their ideas get validated, sometimes their ideas get rejected, and you will see different behaviors that students exhibit.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes if some faculty or somebody comes and says this idea won't work, immediately they will say, oh, so and so has told it won't work, we will drop this idea. Right. Then we ask them, will you just drop an idea just because somebody has told you something? You worked on it for one semester, why didn't you think about this?
Right.
Right. So this kind of dialogue process is what we try to facilitate around the whole thing, where students can start seeing that, okay, it is okay to explore problems. We may not completely understand it. We can also look at some external viewpoints. We can go back and validate. Next semester, we can come back and probe it further instead of dropping it, and so on. They also start realizing that the way they are forming teams, right?
Yeah.
Initially, it could be driven by I like you, you like me kind of thing, right? Later, the teams start breaking down. And so some teams start showing persistence. You can see that the persistence of the topic and the persistence of the team will become visible. And in the second semester, I used to do a course on sociology of design.
Okay.
Where I used to take them through this process of, now that you have discovered some problem domain, can you really understand what users are looking for in this domain?
So I want to pause here before we go into the next semester. That is the immediately next semester, fourth semester?
Fourth.
So before we go there, I want to ask some questions on what you have explained so far. So we're saying semester 3 of this program, 4-year BTech program, you introduce a course, systems thinking, but in the course what they're doing is they are forming teams, they're observing a problem, they're studying it, and then they're displaying a possible conceptual solution, and then they get some feedback, right? And then there is a behavior which emanates based on the feedback, and then you help them digest that behavior. So what happened, the logistics of arranging this in a course? For example, you would have 240 students in this course, right? 240, even if there are 4 to 5 people in one team, there are about 50 teams.
Yes.
50 teams. Now, how do you spend time with each team? How do you talk to each team, listen to their ideas during the semester? Can you help me understand those logistics?
So technically, if you say a semester is a 70-day semester, this kind of thing will take at least 40 days effort, right? Which is very different from a conventional teaching model. What we do is, since we work with teams, we don't work at an individual level. So we ask them to form teams on an average 4 to 5 people. So it will be roughly about 30, 40, 50 teams.
50 teams, yeah. And it's only one faculty or is it a group of
only
faculty?
one faculty, right? And the course is done in 2 batches of 120 each.
Okay.
Right. So it's a 3-hour continuous slot that we do in a week. So 3 hours, 2 3-hour slots.
Okay.
For one course.
Okay.
And so what we do is we talk at a team level minimum 3 times during a semester.
Okay.
Right. So each team's work gets reviewed on a periodic basis. And overall, at least 3 times we do a review.
Okay.
A discussion with the teams, understanding as they are submitting their individual. So there are 3 levels of submissions they do. The first one is discovery of all the relevant information. Second is their diagnosis of what is the real issue. Third is their high-level concept design.
Okay.
So the first 2 things I do a review, but when it comes to the third review where they present the concept, there we make it as a peer review and an external review. Right. So with that, at least each team gets to interact 3 times in a semester, and you can also start noticing the team's character, the quality of the idea,
Yeah.
all this lot of subtle information you can also gather. So coming back to your earlier point in terms of how these students navigated to that 4% students, right? So some of these students picked up ideas in their third semester which persisted through the process.
I see.
So like one student team wanted to work on chronic kidney disease. So their initial problem statement was, we want to do something in chronic kidney disease. And when they did this ideation and initial understanding of the problem, they might have come up with some concept which,
Yeah.
and then next semester when they go, they iterate, and third semester, some of the concepts and the understanding of the problem will keep changing. But as long as the team is persistent, right, then we saw that in these cases, the teams were very persistent, and the problem and the idea kept refining.
Changing. Yeah.
When they came to their sixth semester, they could actually do a prototype and a proof of concept and so on.
Okay.
Right.
So another follow-up question on this. Typically, I have seen courses where in a semester you build something. You go from discovering the problem statement to not only conceptualizing but also building something. Fine. In this case, this is a real deep dive into only the problem statement, and solution conceptualization is probably 10% of the time that they spend towards the end. How do you sustain students' interest in this? First of all, it's called a system thinking course, but all they are doing is discovering a problem. There's no technical element to it necessarily, right? There is you're talking to people, you're reading literature, you're studying the problem, but you're not building anything.
No, you are applying some of the systems methods to model this problem.
Okay.
So there is a learning of various systems methods which is happening as part of this. Right. And so their problem discovery is driven by some of the methods.
Okay.
Right?
Can you give me some methods?
Like for example, stakeholder analysis.
Okay.
So where you dissect the problem into who are the stakeholders, what are their needs, what are the constraints, what are the alterables, right? And you structure the problem. Similarly, we use methods like interpretive structural modeling to create a problem hierarchy or come up with a objective tree.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So this gives a lot of clarity and structure to the whole thing. And similarly, network analysis is also extensively used in these methods to discover what are the most critical central elements in this whole story, so on. So about 5-6 methods they get exposed to. So they are learning some methods of an ability to apply it to a totally new problem, right? At the end of it, they are also coming up with a concept. And we ask them to do a small mock-up, right? It is not a full-scale solution or a prototype because they don't have all the technical engineering skills at this stage. So we ask them to do at least as a concept, how can you communicate this idea to somebody using thermocol, using those kind of low fidelity prototypes is what they will do. When they go to the next 2-3 semesters, the ideas start evolving more, and the refinement in the proof of concept also happens. So in every iteration, you are refining the problem, refining the solution, and the fidelity low quality of the prototype is also slightly refining. But it's only when you come to the 6th semester, you do a reasonably functional prototype.
So again, I'm asking you to pause here because we're going to the 6th semester very quickly.
No, so coming back to your point, sustaining interest is what you said, right? Interest sustains because of the discovery of what deeper understanding you have gained about the whole domain. So wherever people have felt their understanding of the domain has improved, or understanding of some of the methods and other things have improved, that is what
keeps them
keeps
going.
pushing the
Do they do stakeholder interviews, user research?
In the third semester, no.
Okay.
It is mostly based on secondary research. But when they come to the 4th semester, this is where we have the course on sociology of design, where we introduced them to methods like ethnography, field
Right.
survey, and then we asked them go and meet some people,
Hmm.
go and actually see how this problem is panning out in the real world,
Okay.
right? And through that, again, can you refine your understanding of the problem?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how the thing keeps evolving. Right?
Got it. I'm contrasting this with the philosophy of agile development, for example, where or the build, measure, learn loop, where you do a lean methodology, you quickly build something, take it to the customer, and then take the feedback and learn from it. As opposed to that, here we are spending entire semester only defining the problem, right? So there is one philosophy which I sort of use quite often when we teach students, where we say build something very quickly and try to go to the customer and try to sell it. They don't buy it. Since you've made it in a lean way, you don't lose much. Now you redefine the problem. Here we are only spending 70 days only understanding the problem a lot in detail, but what if at the end of 70 days they figure out, no, this is not worth solving, then isn't the student demotivated or not?
It can happen, but again, see, the assumption behind agile is also that you have some understanding of a problem. Here we have a student who is completely raw. They don't know the domain. They don't have the technical knowledge base. So again, we are essentially, it's a first objective is to enhance learning, right? Can they pick up interest in a domain?
Right. Okay.
Right. Whether they solve a problem or not comes later. But can they get interested in a domain? Can they this process trigger them to learn more, go deeper into whatever technical skills they need, right? So that is the trigger that we are expecting through this process,
Okay.
right? Not necessarily that they end up with a. To be realistic, they cannot really have a solution even at the end of sixth semester, right?
Sure.
But the process of engaging with the problem repeatedly, and this is where that immersive understanding of the problem is something which
Sure.
needs to come out, right?
And how do you evaluate students for this course?
Yeah, so typically in these courses we follow what is a 60-40 model, where 60% is given for this explorative process.
Okay.
Through a series of assignments and other things, we review their at every stage what they are doing, how they are applying the methods and so on.
Okay.
We don't necessarily look at the uh, outcomes there, but more the process.
Okay.
Right. And then 40% is treated as a typical end semester exam, whether they have understood the concepts or not.
Okay.
Whether they are able to logically reason about the different concepts and so on.
Okay.
So that's the mix we follow, given a so this is where it differs a little bit from a typical design school, where a lot more freedom is there, where the entire focus can shift towards evaluating the prototype and so on, instead of an exam. But because we are still in an engineering kind of institution, we have to balance a little bit, keep the conceptual focus as well as the prototype kind of thing.
Okay. And as a faculty, one final question on the first semester, then we will go to the second semester. Third semester, but first semester of the intervention, and then we go to the next semester. As a faculty, somebody who's facilitating all of this, what do you need to prepare for yourselves in terms of, mindset, in terms of what you need in the class, in terms of handling the logistics? How do you prepare yourself?
So one of the challenges we will have is most of our classrooms are not designed for this.
Okay.
Right? Because most of the classrooms are lecture-based classrooms. Right? The seating arrangements are very rigid in the sense you cannot even move the chairs. Right? So they are not ideally suited for this kind of collaborative work. So initially we had to work with, because we had this constraint of space and structure for large classes and so on. But later, slowly we convinced the leadership to also look at more open classroom structures with flexible furniture.
Okay.
Where people could sit around a table and discuss. And so that is one thing that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
Right? Second is a faculty needs to spend a lot of time, both in terms of listening, discussing, validating with students, and faculty may not have an understanding of all the domains.
I was going to ask
Right?
that, yes.
So this is where you are jointly discovering along with the students. Right? So you will need to do your own research, collect some more literature, understand this, and jointly explore along with the students. So that perspective is required for the faculty.
Yeah.
Right? For me, it was a little natural because my training has been in systems engineering, which is domain invariant. Right? And I always approach different domains with the view that I can always see things in a different perspective compared to somebody in that domain. And throughout my industry, that's what I've been doing. So that played, I mean, I try to leverage that a lot more in this case. Then the third aspect you will also have is managing expectations.
Okay.
Of students, and because people can be in this mode of like agile mode, that right, I solve something and overnight it becomes success, and if people are in that mode, you have to keep preparing them that it is a long journey.
Yeah.
Right? And you need to be persistent. No startup happens just like that. Right? So talking to them more in terms of really trying to, what you will say as more open-ended discussions and trying to understand jointly and setting realistic expectations from what this whole activity can do to them. That will be an important part of this process. Right? And also sometimes you'll have to manage sometimes what happens, the students work and the teams break down, and then they want to change the topic, they want to change the team. So you have to keep talking to them, saying, pushing them towards more realistic understanding of how they can manage this.
Right.
So these are things that, so a lot of soft skills that the faculty needs to also exhibit when it comes to these kind of activities.
Any specific student group story comes to your mind?
Quite a few are there, in fact.
Tell us one.
Yeah, so for example, one of the student teams, it was an all girls team. They came up with an idea saying, we want to store internet.
Store internet? Okay.
Right? This was their idea. So then, so I had talked to them to understand why this idea they had come up with, what it meant to them and all that. But they also went and talked about this idea to their department faculty.
Okay.
Right? And because when we were implementing this program first time, a lot of people were also curious what is happening. Students are spending more time in this low credit courses.
Okay.
Right? So people used to ask them what is going on in this course and all. So somewhere they had told that we are working on this idea of storing internet. So immediate feedback is a very logical feedback from any faculty having knowledge is this is irrational ideas, right? You don't even know the basics. Why are you wasting time on these? Right? So these kind of statements can come up, which is I would say logically valid from their point of view. But how does a student react to that? So these are third semester students. For the first time coming out of the JEE process, for the first time they are experiencing some openness, some space given them to ideate, and they have come up with some idea, and somebody is saying it is not feasible, and you go back and study basics. So they will treat it as the faculty is a source of knowledge, and he has told this is impractical. So the right thing to do is to go back and work on our basics, and let's forget about all this product design and so on.
Right.
And this is anyway a low credit course. let's reduce the risk.
Okay.
This is a natural thing which will happen. So this is where you can see how that small oxygen or small thing created can be dosed without even faculty realizing it.
Yeah.
On the other hand, what I had to do is to take them through a process of understanding, reformulating this, right? Because to me, any idea is okay. Anything is starting point is fine. How do you explore it further?
Yeah.
So then I had to ask them, why do you want to store internet?
Right.
Right. So then immediate reaction is, no, when we come into the academic block, we have internet access. When we go to our hostel, we don't have internet.
Okay.
Right. So then one question you can prompt is, does this metaphor of physically carrying things, does it apply to information technology?
Right.
Right. Which could trigger some thinking. Alternatively, you can say, can you rephrase this problem?
Yeah.
What you are essentially saying is, you don't have access to internet when you are there. You have access to internet here. One way of rephrasing is, wherever you go, internet should be going along with you.
Right.
Or you should have signal access wherever you are going. If you rephrase it like that, it could open up some other way of looking at this thing.
Right.
Maybe somebody can think of a tower which moves.
Yeah.
Signal, any network operator has certain zone in which he is operating. But if a network operator knows where is his where are his customers going? Suppose there is a sports event happening outside the city and his people are all moving in that direction. Can he create a temporary access?
Yeah.
By moving a tower or a drone based tower, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? So allowing them to rephrase the problem is an important step. Right? So I had to do things like that. Right? But that is what is the real thing required here.
Right.
Right? It is not saying whether it is right or wrong, because this is an early stage of exploration. They don't have all the knowledge base. They need to learn. And you are trying to create that curiosity for them to learn. Even if the way they have framed something is inconsistent, helping them to reframe and explore it is what needs to be done. And if you do that, it creates that further process for them to continue in that journey,
Right.
rather than dropping it.
So this entire facilitation process is the key.
Yeah.
More than, if we were to tell someone to adopt this methodology, introduce a course, and then let students identify, discover a problem, study a problem, present a problem. But that is not the soul of it. The software behind this, the philosophy behind this is to encourage the students to go crazy thinking about the idea, be creative, right? And this is the time when students are at their high in terms of thinking about storing internet, for example. But the same problem could be rephrased, and the faculty really has to facilitate that process rather than blocking them, saying no and not even offering an alternative way of approaching that. So great. So this is the second year engineering student in the first semester. The third semester, learning to discover a problem and presenting it. And the essential component of validation in the end is also what I liked, where somebody from outside or peers evaluated, you get feedback, gives you a sense of accomplishment or a validation which keeps you going. Let us go to the next semester, semester 4. What happens in this semester?
Yeah. So here we had a course called Sociology of Design, and there was another course called Designing Intelligent Systems.
Okay.
So these two courses were in parallel. One was more like, how do you conceptualize a smart product? Because now that they have defined a problem, if they were to build a smart solution for that, how could they conceptualize the architecture of a smart solution? Not necessarily the details of it.
Okay.
What kind of product architecture will be required when we say an intelligent product? And what kind of AI methods might be useful?
Okay.
Right? There are several AI methods, but which type of AI method may be more useful for this type of concept?
When you say AI methods?
So, for example, you have fuzzy methods, you have a set of your neural networks and all this. So we just introduced them to 4 or 5 AI methods as
Are you
part of
referring
this
to
course.
artificial
Yeah,
intelligence?
artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Because the course was designing intelligent systems.
Okay.
So how do you build intelligent systems? How do you conceptualize?
Are you referring to sociology of design?
No, this is one course called Designing Intelligent Systems.
Okay.
Then the other course is the Sociology of Design.
Okay.
So in intelligent systems design, we used to ask them to conceptualize a smart product. In Sociology of Design, we used to tell about two things. One is primarily working with people, whether they are users or the teams. Because design is a social process.
Yeah.
You are building it for the people and it is built by the people. So how do you understand people?
Yeah.
And groups? So understanding users. How do you do ethnography? How do you really go deep into figuring out what empathy means? What really a user is thinking, feeling, what he says versus what he does. So these are the kinds of, so we introduce them to various activities where we sensitize this behaviors of empathizing, right?
Okay.
Understanding users, observing things better. So we, in fact, in the campus itself, we send them out of the class. Most of this first 5-6 classes in this course, they are all outside the class, which again is a very strange thing for students. You are coming to a class and you are being sent outside the class.
Yeah.
To go and observe small things in the campus, right? Notice some cracks, notice something which you find interesting,
Right.
come back and report it.
Right.
Like that. So these are 5-6 activities that we do in the first 5 sessions, where we push them towards observing better, noticing what people are actually doing. We ask them to observe how security staff is sitting, standing, how is he keeping the keys, and
Right.
Cupboard keys and all that. Various garden staff, how they operate, all these kind of things. So then the second part of this course deals with working with teams, working with people, organizations, and so on. So in this course actually played a very significant role, I would say, in this whole transformation process. Because what was also being discussed as part of this course is how do you students deal with contradictions.
Okay.
Because by the time we were implementing this program, we noticed that students were beginning to sense a kind of a contradiction between a design course and an engineering course, right? So in design course, they felt the people are giving them freedom to explore, think and something, whereas I go to an engineering class, it is exactly opposite.
Okay.
Right? There is one solution, there is one right solution, and right? So this in students' mind started emerging as a contradiction.
Okay.
Now, normally what happens in when you are posed with a contradiction, what do people do? Even when you take management philosophy, you
evaluate,
go back to Porter's theory of right strategy and so on. What does Porter say? You cannot be both. You cannot be a differentiator and a cost leader. Right? You have to choose one. So when you are presented a paradox or two opposites, a natural tendency is to choose one.
Yeah.
Which one do you choose? Where your comfort zone lies, you will end up choosing that. So we used to present them a paradox in the class.
Okay.
Saying that if I were to give you a small grid of engineering versus design.
Okay.
I like design, I don't like design. I like engineering, I don't like engineering.
Okay. And
we asked them, where do you fit? Make a sincere guess and or based on your state of mind, you tell where do you fit. And 5-6 years I have published one paper also on that. So we have seen very consistent results in that matrix. 5% of students very consistently say they don't like design, don't like engineering. And probably they are very sincere. Right?
Okay.
And about 15% say they like design, don't like engineering.
They like design, they
don't
don't
like
like
engineering.
15%.
25% will say they like engineering, don't like design.
Okay.
The remaining 55% to 60% will keep saying they like both.
Hmm.
Then we also ask them to sketch their experience of going through this program.
Okay.
What are they experiencing going, like we call it as a rich picture, which is also another method for capturing information.
Sure.
So we ask them to sketch a picture about what they are experiencing going through this. And we find very interesting pictures, very revealing pictures of their state of mind. We also ask them to create a exhibition of these pictures and self-organize the pictures based on the themes.
Mm-hmm.
And then end of the semester, I talk to all the students one-to-one.
Okay.
250 students. I used to
One-to-one.
do it until the class sizes became 350, 400. I did that.
Okay.
After it increased to beyond 400, I made it optional. I couldn't handle 500 students. I cannot do that. It used to take a whole week. I used to give them 15 minutes for each student. Just listen to why they have taken a certain slot in that grid and what picture they have drawn. I don't give any advice. I only listen to what is their thought process behind what they are saying. So for example, students in that 5% bracket, when they say I don't like design, don't like engineering, so some of them may say, no, I want to go for IAS or I want to pursue public services, something like that. So then all I can ask them is, how will you manage this going through this process? You have already made a choice to come here. You have to spend another 6 semesters or 5 semesters in this process. What are you planning to do? Will you go through this process in a denial mode that I don't like this, I want to be somewhere, right? Or can you use this in some way to achieve that goal? So that kind of probing I try to do.
Okay.
There are also cases where students have said, like, she is a computer science student and she said, I am in computer science, but I don't like computer science. So she had said, I like design. So I had asked her, why you like design? So then the reason is, I don't like computer science.
It's a rescue.
So is that a logic? What is this thing? So then when I probed, I came to know that she said, because the other students come from CBSE background, they have an advantage and I cannot compete with them.
Okay.
Then I had also asked her, what is that you actually like? Then she said, I like sports. And she was in the institute sports team. So then I had to, it just stuck to me as we were talking. So then I asked her, will you stop running if somebody is running in front of you? Then she said, no. Then what are you doing here? So this is the kind of conversation. I don't give an answer or a solution, but looking at the data, I keep asking questions. So those students who say, I like both, we also challenge them, saying, how can you be both? We are not running a BDes and a BTech program.
Yeah.
It's only a 4-year program. You will only get a BTech degree. You are still an engineer. How can you say you like both? Right? So, because in their minds, somewhere they think they can be designer and engineer. We are only saying you are a design-centric engineer. You are not a designer and engineer.
The degree that you're giving is still BTech.
BTech.
And within the BTech, we're trying to build the design spine, right? Yeah.
So these kind of conversations, I felt really creates a far deeper connect and probably opens them for a deeper thinking, because many times they, or the kind of assumptions that they carry, many problematic assumptions can be addressed through this process.
And And this is very open conversation.
Ah.
This is in like a coaching conversation where you ask them questions. And when they say the answer, they discover something which they won't
Yeah.
notice when someone else advises them, right?
And based on their data. So like somebody had drawn a
Right.
picture, like for example, we had a student who's a 6-point CGPA student
Okay.
who drew a picture saying he showed a few goats, sheep,
Mm-hmm.
and then cows on the other side. In between, he put IIITDM as a grazing ground.
Okay.
And he said, can sheep become cows
Okay.
by grazing here?
Okay.
And his answer is, it can't. This is the picture he drew.
Okay. What does it mean?
So then I had to ask him, what are you trying to say? So basically he's saying creativity is inborn. You cannot train me for creativity.
Okay.
Right? Then I asked him, do you know how creative you are? Because you have drawn a picture which is having so deep meaning.
Right.
And you say, I am not creative? Isn't that a contradiction? Right?
Right.
So these kind of very powerful, these are learnings for me, not just the student. So there is a lot of learning that I underwent through this process of really listening to students.
Yeah.
And in certain cases, it may also have opened up them to little more questioning themselves and their assumptions, right? And so that this course really was to a large extent transformational for me.
I mean, listening to all of this is very transformational and
So I
empowering.
published one paper on this whole experience in that particular course, and the way introduction of design in an engineering program creates contradictions, but how those contradictions can be used very effectively as a learning tool. And to an extent, I feel some of the students who grappled and understood that, their career paths have changed significantly.
Okay, very interesting. Sociology of design. Not only you are understanding people, you're working with people, you are developing empathy, you're learning methods of exploring how people behave, observing them. But you're also, in the end, reflecting on who you want to be. And what's amazing is you create space for every student to then talk to you. And they can have revelations there which could change the trajectory for them. And still, you are teaching this course again in the next semester, or you have someone
I'm
else?
continuing to do that because it's you won't find many faculty who will come forward for course like that.
So, okay, so far semester 3 and semester 4, they're not happening at the same time, so you can teach, but you have the other course in this semester parallelly going on,
so
designing intelligent systems.
Yeah, for about 3 years I had to do these two courses in parallel until we found some other faculty who was willing to take up that course. So it was quite a hectic load I had.
You're only running these courses?
Yes.
So it's also important for the institute to allow that, to encourage that, right?
Yeah, it so happened, like, because I was a visiting faculty that time.
Okay.
So my entire focus was on teaching.
And you also then have to have a flair for both. On the problem discovery, sociology of design, intelligent systems, right? So you have to have flair for all of these, and sociology and user research are actually very, very different things compared to engineering or building products, right?
That partly comes from my prior experience and this thing, because my earlier education or PhD was in systems engineering, public policy, and so on.
Okay.
That had given me a much more broader interdisciplinary perspective.
Right.
Then my work in the industry has been a lot on change management, and so a lot of my learning on sociology happened there.
Okay.
Right, and so somehow that I could leverage in it's a kind of the arrangement of these courses in this institute seemed to fit with whatever I could offer.
Okay. I continue to wait to further explore, your corporate experience and the book which was titled Managing Nothing. I'll wait for that. And I now want to jump into the other course in this semester, which is Designing Intelligent Systems. What happens in this course?
So in this course, they are essentially in systems thinking, they have defined a problem and come up with a concept. Now we say, okay, suppose somebody says, I want to do an air filter. I want to look at air pollution and I want to design a filter for dealing with air pollution, right? So then the question is, if I were to make it, because we were also getting into this 2015 time frame where all this IoT and all this was started to come, right? So this course we essentially said, can you look at not just a concept, but can you make it as a smart product concept?
Okay.
Right? So suppose I have got an idea of, I'll come up with a certain way of reducing pollution or air filter. How can I make it smart? Can I add some intelligence into it? Can that product be a little more adaptive, sensitive to its environment, right? So if I have to build these kind of features, what does it mean? So this is what we were pushing them to. Can I think of a smarter concept? And what would be the architecture of that smart concept? Without getting into all the technicalities, right? When the technicalities, because they still don't have all the skills.
Okay.
Right? The idea we were, the way we were looking at it is, when they are doing this design course, their concept development should be happening. Parallelly, when in all the other engineering courses, their technical skills should be built. Right? So here, can they give shape to an intelligent concept? So they may say, my air filter will be adaptive to the kind of pollution which is emerging, or to the volume of pollution which is there. Right? So its filters will change on its own, something like that, right? So they are essentially bringing, they can also bring biological metaphors, bio-inspired metaphors and other things to conceptualizing these solutions. Then we will also tell, can you pick one most suited AI tool for this?
Okay.
Right? What kind of, if you want to make this smart, which kind of, what is the level of smartness? First, you in smartness also you have this hierarchy of different degrees of smartness, right?
Right.
So for certain problems you just need a sense and respond. For certain other problems you need a little more deeper intelligence.
Right.
So then we say, okay, if it is only sense and respond, which kind of AI methods will make sense? And can you just develop an initial algorithm on those lines, more like a pseudocode?
Okay.
To show how it might look like. To that extent, we push them.
Okay.
Right? They are still not developed fully, but it goes one step beyond the initial concept that they have got. So that's what this course attempts.
Okay. What is the, so the outcome is that they just develop an initial algorithm. They conceptually design without the technical skills, they conceptually design how this smart system would look like. Again, how do you evaluate? Is there again one-to-one interaction or presentations or demonstration?
The same way, the same groups which were formed in the systems thinking course are expected to work here on the same topic.
And they're developing on the same topic.
Same topic.
So they're developing this smart system to solve the same problem.
So the same group also works in sociology course, does user research.
Okay.
So you can see the persistence of the groups and the topics.
And the topics, I'm imagining, they'll just keep changing, right?
So what we have seen is, to a large extent, at least 70% topics will persist.
Okay.
Some people we allow them to change if they are really discovered that it will not work. We ask them to change, and or sometimes the teams break down, so they want to reformulate. Some cases we allow them to, but to a large extent, and if I have to reflect on my last few years' observations, the kind of ideas or the problems the first 3 batches generated were fairly unique.
Unique, okay.
Very interesting problems came out from their initial discovery process. right? And so one of the ideas which also developed through this intelligent systems course was a prosthetic leg that mimics another leg,
Okay.
right? So this is eventually became a patent and a company and so on. The idea emerged in the systems thinking and got refined in this course.
Okay.
Right. So it is essentially like for amputees with upper limb amputees. The idea was they have one leg, but the right leg, if it has to move, you can use the Jaipur foot and others, but Jaipur foot doesn't fit well for an upper limb amputee. So you need some kind of prosthetic element, but then anything which is rigid cannot work there. And the weight of this also causes a difficulty. So the idea was, can you build a mechanism which will mimic the left leg? Because when you move the left leg, you know how much force you need to apply to move the right one. So can the device provide that extra lift for the right leg to move?
Okay.
So this concept they tried to come up with.
Okay.
And eventually this bunch of students who they filed a patent, then they started a company. They persisted with it for quite some time, but then later realized that the kind of market they are addressing is a too limited a market.
Yeah.
But they will need to move towards more of supporting the industrial use of this thing. Where in India we still don't have that kind of market for the thing.
Yeah. Typically that's the.
So one of them went on to do a PhD in that area.
Oh, I see.
Because of all this, he got into a PhD program, is now in the finishing stages and may end up setting a company in the US. So I don't know.
But this is really intense. This is really intense and sustaining through, and I've only heard 3 semesters, there are more. These 3 courses would create a lot of, deep understanding about the problem and then trying to come up with a solution. So I see the design spine building in that process. Okay, so that is 2 semesters and 3 courses are done. Now, what happens in the next semester? That's semester 5.
In the 5th semester, they have an entrepreneurship course, entrepreneurship and management course. Plus, parallelly, they used to have another course. Data analytics or something used to be there, but mostly in the entrepreneurship course, we used to now ask them to converge, saying that, okay, now you have some problem, some concept, some user research. Can you find, is there a market is there a business potential around this?
Okay.
Is there who is the competition in this area? What is the price points, right? All the business side of the story. And at the end of it, can you build an initial business model for this idea? That's the outcome expected from this course. So from a problem to concept to defining a potential.
But again, in this course, they might discover that there is no business model.
Yeah.
Now they have to figure out another problem. And
not
again,
necessarily a pivoting can be done. You can explore alternative ways. But if there is a real dead end, then you can go back and discover again.
Now they have to do the entire 3 courses again on their own,
no,
right?
They don't have to do. See, the idea is this is part of their learning process. See, primary importance is they're learning what it means to build a product, what it means to really translate that into this. This is what they're learning.
Not necessarily to build a product, learning to build the product is the outcome.
Right.
Okay.
That is for majority that will apply. But for those few where things are working out, they are the ones which will start going forward. Right.
Okay.
So this is entrepreneurship course is followed by a prototyping course.
That is in the next semester?
That is in the 6th.
Okay.
Where they do a full-fledged, reasonable functional prototype for this concept. Okay. So they have done a business validation, they have done a technical validation. So at the end of 6th semester, they can really start asking, is there something in this to take it forward? Is there a business validation for this? Is there a technical validation for this?
Hmm.
Right? Is there a user validation for this? If I have all these three, can I take it forward is the question. That is the logical end. And for those where these three pieces don't fall together, for them it becomes, they go into and complete their rest of the engineering, right? But they have experienced this whole journey. For those where these pieces are fitting well, they have an option. We used to have a full semester internship program in the 7th semester. So where what we used to do is, those guys who have shown this promise and are interested, we used to offer an internship from the incubator.
Okay.
Saying that you work on the same idea as part of your internship. Incubator will provide facilities if you want to use the incubation facilities and all. Some prototyping and other support we will provide. We will not pay anything, but they can use, they can come and sit in the incubator space, use the labs and others to build that idea further.
This is after the third year?
The 7th semester.
In the 7th semester. So it's a concurrent internship alongside the
no
academic.
coursework. We had
full semester,
we had a
full
full
time
semester internship.
Okay.
That was something interesting in the academic program. Right?
Full-time internship in Incubator. And they are actually building the product again. But what is different? Earlier they did in semester 6 a prototyping course where probably again they had access to materials, funding.
So
and now
it would have come up to some level, but then it will not be a fully functional prototype. They would have done 1 feature, 2 features, they would have demonstrated there. It's a proof of concept.
POC.
Going from POC to the next level is what they can, it will need multiple iterations. So the next iteration is what they can do during the internship period.
Okay. And then you put them part of an existing incubation program, they become formally an incubatee and incubator?
No, we treat them more like a pre-incubation.
Okay.
Right? We provide an internship certificate from the incubator, but they can use incubation facilities to interact with people, and any of the labs and others they can utilize to build that prototype. Right?
Got it. One idea that I'm still grappling with is, you first teach the entrepreneurship course and then they do the prototyping in the next semester. What is the logic for that?
It was more like the sequence of courses were like that. So we just had to use that sequence effectively. So the idea was you at least do all kinds of validation, user validation, business validation and all that. And then the prototyping course is actually building skills in prototyping, right? But you are using that course to test the technical feasibility as well. So that so it is already in that course structure. So we were just ensuring that we use that course structure more effectively.
So that's semester 7.
Yeah.
Is there another thing?
Semester 7 is their internship. Then when they come to the final semester, they will have to do a BTech project as part of a regular BTech program. So there what we did was to create a separate stream for these kind of students who are more working on topics of interest to them. We called it an interdisciplinary project panel.
Okay.
And because see what in the initial stages when we saw the first 2 batches, when students with this kind of mindset went into project reviews, the departmental perspectives used to dominate.
Okay.
And it became a little bit problem for them, because somebody, suppose he has done a market research for his product and he goes and presents in a mechanical engineering department or an electronics department, their natural questions will be, this is not electronics.
Yeah, yeah, that happens.
Right. So we had to create a separate space for these people. So we had to create a separate stream called interdisciplinary projects, where we had a panel of faculty from different departments, but essentially evaluation is based on what the student is pursuing, depending on whatever stage and whatever topic is in, focus more on how well he has done that work.
Okay.
It need not be whether it fits into electronics or mechanical.
Correct.
So that shift we had to bring in.
Okay.
So that these channels we had to create for them to navigate the academic process and give enough time to work on their own topic.
So, in semester 8, again, you have a BTech project. You've already done an iteration in semester 7 as part of your internship in the incubator. So, what are you doing in semester 8?
What we will do is we ask them to pick up one or two real technical issues which they want to address. So, they would have grappled with the system level things until now. Now we start narrowing down to, is there one or two real technical issues that you can resolve?
Okay.
So use this project to just work on, maybe I want to do this gear design or, right?
Yeah.
Which will satisfy the requirement of the project, at the same time will solve one piece in the puzzle for you. And at the end of this, they can take a call whether they want to set up a company or not. So when they come to the graduation, they can decide. So even in our startup policy, we had made it that you can take a call after doing these things. So don't necessarily start in your second year or something. After you cross the third, fourth, seventh semester, that is where we said you can take a call in terms of setting up a company and so on.
Okay. So from the outside, we also had at IIT Mandi, a series of courses where we said in the first year you will do a reverse engineering course. Second year you build a prototype in a design thinking, design practicum course. In third year you do a socio-technical program course where you go out and talk to the society and learn the problems and present a solution. And finally you have a major technical project. And in between, you can pick up a course on entrepreneurship in any of these semester, third or fourth year typically, and that gives you the business acumen a little bit. But that is how it is projected maybe on the slides or broadly when we talk. But at the micro level, implementation level for a student, it is very, very stretched and disjointed. And sustaining an idea right from second year, from third semester onwards to the eighth semester, how many ideas out of 40-50 teams that you had the continuity that this is what they begin with? Of course there will be pivots, but largely across these years, how many ideas sustain staying the same?
So if you take between third to sixth semester, I would say at least 60% of ideas will persist.
Okay.
Right? To a large extent, we have seen that. Those which come into seventh and eighth will be tapered down. Right? But what, I mean, all those companies which eventually emerged, in some way I was able to handhold them throughout this journey. So because I used to handle 2 courses in every semester. So for example, in third semester, I'll handle the entrepreneurship and fifth semester course and the third semester course.
Yeah.
Or fourth semester and sixth semester course.
Correct.
And when they come into internship, into incubator, since I am handling the incubator, I will also be supervising them.
Correct.
Final year project, when they come into interdisciplinary projects, some of them may take me as a project guide.
Yes.
So that way,
you were with them
had a continuity I could provide to some of the students. But when you have different faculty doing this, you will have this challenge because everybody doesn't connect in the same way, and it can lead to.
And also, was there a focus only on deep tech, that there has to be a product based solution, it has to have sufficient technology element? Because now everyone is looking at an AI agent, AI powered solution. So a lot of software based solutions. So would software based products or solutions or ventures require this long cycle of learning, or did you specify that in this entire series of courses you have to work on deep tech?
We kept emphasizing products which combine hardware and software. Right. We said only software we used to discourage a little bit, but getting them to focus on anything where mechanical, electronics and IT can combine, because if you look at our institute's mandate, it is also IT, design and manufacturing. So the
Yeah,
3 elements we wanted to combine.
you had to combine.
Our incubator has a very specific goal of only promoting hardware startups. So we had to encourage more of interdisciplinary kind of thing rather than only software. Still we allowed, there are certain teams which have done only, like for example video analytics and that kind of things were there, but
Okay.
there will be not a large number.
I think that's it so far it has been a very interesting deep dive into and you so methodically explained in detail each course, each semester, and I think the educators who would listen to this can really pick and implement it. And if somebody wants to really implement it, can they reach out to you?
Yeah.
Do you have this entire thing written down somewhere? As a pack saying this is the first course, in this course do these activities. In the paper of course it will be very brief, it will be learning,
Paper,
right?
there are a couple of papers where we have discussed this, like for example about the systems thinking experience I have discussed in one paper. About sociology I have discussed in one paper. Right now there is one paper where which is under review, but where I have discussed about what we did in a foundation course. After the first iteration, we went back to slight changes in the curriculum where we introduced a foundation course in the first semester. So right now that paper is under review. So these are some publications available where we have actually gone into detail. The other report which we have written for the ministry also has some content on this.
Okay.
Apart from that, in the CRE portal, there is one talk which I had given
Okay.
early explaining this journey and so.
Yeah. So there are a bunch of resources which can be utilized and we'll pick them up and share along with this video as well. Okay. Now this program led to these papers and a report as well, which was noticed by the Ministry of Education. And then from there on, you went on to design a program, CBD program, Capacity Development Program on Design and Entrepreneurship, which is currently being spread across the country. Right now, there are about 40 institutions across the country who are trying to absorb learnings from this entire structure and trying to implement this. So tell us a little bit about the CBD program and what have been your learnings from it.
Yeah. So before that, around 2022, the Ministry of Education set up a committee to look at how can institutions produce the next generation of entrepreneurs. This was triggered by a discussion, I think, at the National Startup Advisory Council of Startup India, where I think some questions were raised on how do we build more of design capabilities in startups and can we move towards more of deep tech startups. So these kind of questions probably were there. And the Ministry of Education formed a committee to look into that, which was primarily involving people like Shri Manoj Kohli, who was that time I think CEO of SoftBank.
Okay.
And then Professor Kamakoti was there, IIT Madras director. So I was made part of that committee. So as part of that committee, we essentially were asking what kind of startups can academic institutions produce and how can they actually contribute to this in a greater way.
Yeah.
What we already had at that time, see this was in 2022, where many institutions, because of the Startup India campaign and all that, many institutions had many of the building blocks. So when you say they had entrepreneurship cell, they had an IPR cell, they had incubators, they had courses on say entrepreneurship. These kind of things were already there in the institutions. But really the question, if you look at how many of students are actually converting into startup founders
Right.
at the end of the academic program, what we found was it is probably less than 1% in general, and in the best of institutions it may be about 3%.
Okay.
This is what we could see from that data. and based on that we gave certain recommendations on what do we mean by a next generation startup. Given the country's context, given the global context of sustainability and all that, we felt there is what is a startup really? Corporates are already there. They are producing machines, tools, etc., and all that is already happening. So what is that a startup is really going to do differently? So if startups, essentially the promise is, can they change the socio-material relationships which are there?
Okay.
If they are able to achieve or set a new kind of socio-material relationship, then you are talking about a new breed of startups.
Okay.
Right? And academic institutions are ideally suited for nurturing that.
Okay.
So this is where what we said is, given some of our experiences, I mean IIT Madras has the research park experience and what they have done there, and Manoj Kohli, he mentors a lot of, as CEO of SoftBank, he mentors a lot of the unicorns and others. What we felt was it is feasible for academic institutions to do something in this direction, but a realistic goal can we get them to achieve a threefold increase from wherever they are. Whatever is the type of institution, whether it's a university, whether it's a technical institution or a management institution or any of them, if they are doing today 1% conversion, can they move towards 3%?
Okay.
In a period of 5 years? If they are doing 2%, can they push towards 6%? If they are doing 3%, can they push towards 9%? But realistically, nowhere it will exceed 10% in any form.
Okay.
Right? So that is how we set a goal for what could be a realistic achievement from this. What kind of startups we are really looking at when we say deep tech. Essentially, it should challenge the socio-material structure which is existing.
Let's talk about this
Right.
socio-material. I mean, at the face of it, anyone could draw a different meaning. What do you mean really when you say socio-material relationship?
So what is the kind of real dialogue or relationship which happens between people and with things?
Okay.
Right? So companies are there, people are talking to each other, but we are all stuck in certain patterns of relating, where eventually the person at the bottom feels powerless, the person at the top also feels powerless. This is the paradox of control.
Okay.
Right? And you have large organizations saying we want innovation, and then they will say people at the grassroots have to innovate, and the people at the grassroots will feel people at the top should change.
Okay.
Right? And everybody is stuck in certain pattern of relating which is not changing. So if we really are building a different kind of startups, can we build startups where this equation is a little different? How people relate to each other and how people relate to things around them. Can that be altered?
Okay, so what is the hypothesis? Give me an example to absorb this better. People and things, how people talk to each other and how people interact with things. We want to change this equation. Help me understand this more.
So can this be a more of a generative dialogue between between the people and things? Can it happen? That is what we are really looking at. Say for example, you take take any of these ideas which have emerged, right? So students start with an idea, it goes through iterations, refinements, and so on. But does it lead to a state where it is leading to a new class of products and a different kind of deeper bonding between the co-founders of the company? Right? Okay. Is it seeding a new culture in that startup and a new class of products are they coming out? We are not talking about the same product, I have added more features into that. Are these company startups actually creating new classes of products? Now you see, where can this happen? This can happen in an academic environment. The probability is a lot higher compared to any other
Why is that?
space, because the degrees of freedom here and the access to potential knowledge and other things is a lot more feasible in an academic environment. Like for example, if a student approaches a faculty for some help, within an academic environment, the chance of getting that access is relatively high compared to the same person approaching like a startup and going and trying to get access to an external client. It is a lot more difficult. But as a student, if he approaches even industry, people may be more willing to talk to them compared to this. So this is a kind of a different relationship, which can be explored in a more meaningful way, right? So those possibilities need to be triggered. And academic environment provides a greater chance for that kind of new relationships forming, which are little more generative in nature compared to the patterns that are more stuck, right? So that is what is a kind of hypothesis which was the line of thinking for that report. And the intervention which we suggested was, it should not be just a training program, but it should be a kind of a mentor-oriented interaction program, where you change that equation by bringing external mentors. The relationship between faculty and students, you change by bringing external mentors. So they add a little bit of different flavor to that interaction process. Second is, the institutions also need to commit some resources to enable this
and now
process.
we're talking about the design of the CBD program, capacity building.
So these were some of the recommendations in that report. Right. So
So
based on that,
what is the title of the report?
It is called Building Next Generation Entrepreneurs and Technocrats.
It's available online.
Yeah, it's submitted to the ministry. I'm not sure if it is posted online yet.
So building next generation of entrepreneurs and technocrats.
So
So
based
you're
on
saying
that
the
report,
let me quickly summarize so far what I've understood. So we are discussing the genesis of the CBD program, which is Capacity Development in Design and Entrepreneurship. There was a panel. You wrote a report earlier on papers based on your course experience at IIITDM, and then this paper was picked up, and then you were invited to a panel where you had discussions around how do we build the next generation of entrepreneurs and technocrats. And then the idea was that we have to really think about socio-material interactions. So how do people work with people, and how do those relationships deeper over a period of time while they are working with things and try to come up with a new class of products, right? And you're harping on hardware, software, combination of both. And this entire idea thesis becomes the basis for the design of CBD program, which we are currently running across 40 institutions, helping faculty, implement similar courses in similar style, but also by bringing in external mentors who will become change agents, such as to change the fabric of relationship between students and faculty.
Something is still going on, but it's not visible. So I had to really reflect on that process. So since I was involved in a few change initiatives which turned out positive, I was reflecting more on that process, which also from a theoretical point of view, because initially I started off with systems engineering as part of my PhD and public policy analysis and so on. So that idea of large scale interventions, policy driven, top down, those ideas were very dominant. But when we implemented some initiatives and struggled with these initiatives over a period of time, I had to adopt a different strategy to look at change. And that turned out to be reasonably positive in many cases. So I was just trying to make sense of this alternative perspective. And that is what I tried to bring out in that book
In the book.
through various episodes of change.
But why the title, Managing Nothing?
Yeah, because if you look at in a sense, when we say R&D in a services organization, normally it is treated as nothing.
Okay.
Right.
So when you say I'm managing nothing, you're referring to R&D?
Yeah, in a sense, R&D in services, in R&D in a product development has certain kind of
Right.
structure, focus and all, but R&D in services is more diffused. And to a large extent, any new ideas or something are more seen as a marketing ploy than real value creators, right? So in such case, many of the real innovation initiatives are one sense treated as nothing. But then what I had to show is this nothing actually matters.
Nothing.
So it's a kind of a paradox that I was trying to bring out in that title.
Okay. Great. And also from this book, or the time that you spent in the industry, that inspires a lot of perspective that you have about innovation, about I want to talk about the micro behaviors, particularly how individuals. Earlier we had a conversation about socio-material interaction of people. So from drawing from your corporate experience and then designing the CBD program, first implementing it at IIITDM, what have you observed about people? How do people learn, right? Probably based on that only you are implementing the entire program. So tell us some interesting observations about human behavior in general.
Oh, I'll give one example. I mean, from the corporate side, like for example, in the around 2005 and 6, there was this trend of knowledge management, right? And many institutions or companies were beginning to ask, knowledge is an important asset and we need to codify it, we need to share it, right? And use it as a competitive advantage. This kind of lot of literature also started coming up, tacit knowledge and all that, right? So the company which I was involved in was also in the process of implementing a knowledge management platform. They had spent some money building that platform, then they implemented that platform in a typical corporate style of implementation, which is you have a program, you have a program head, and then you create a structure at a multiple levels, and then you implement the platform, and then provide templates, training to people, and then ask them to upload their knowledge assets. So the same thing was done here. A large platform was created. Several template structures were created for saying these are the different types of knowledge assets somebody could contribute. It could be a like a project case study kind of thing. It could be a very detailed experience of how they won a particular program, right? Like this way, variety of case studies, one page one, multi-page ones, and short presentations like this. Various template structures were created. So, and after about 6 months of implementation, they realized the quality of assets is not good.
Okay.
So it was around that time I had relocated from UK to Chennai, and I had the opportunity to work on this program.
Okay.
But the approach I had taken was largely coming from what I had done in the UK as well, was instead of looking at it as a from the typical managerial perspective of we implemented a platform, we expect people to contribute to it, and people are not contributing means either they don't have the right incentives or they don't have the right skills or the training, or there is no monitoring. So you put a monitoring mechanism, you put train people and you incentivize them, then everything should happen. This is a typical perspective from a management point of view.
Sure.
So my starting point was, let's not accept any of this.
Okay.
Let's really start asking, talk to people to find out what is that they are actually doing. So instead of assuming they are insecure in sharing their assets or their ideas and so on, so I reached out to some of the project accounts. I started with a few accounts that I already knew, the people I knew because of my earlier work in the UK. So when I came back to relocated to Chennai, I didn't know anybody in Chennai. I was relatively new. So I reached out to this one of the client accounts where the account manager I knew, and he had also relocated to Chennai. So I went and met him and said, this is what new role that I have taken. Would you be interested? And he said, okay, you come, let us talk. So I went and spoke to him, and then he said, okay, maybe you talk to these 2-3 teams and see. So then I started talking to the teams more to understand what they were doing. So then I used to make some notes and then give it back to them saying, this is what I understood from what you did. Maybe if possible, you can refine it. So next week when we come back, we'll discuss again. So like this, I started a interaction process with some project teams. And after 4-5 iterations, we found that some meaningful content was emerging.
Okay.
Then I had asked them, do you want to now package this into one of the templates which is already given? They did that. Now, this process slowly started with one client account, one project team, and eventually in 1 year I was talking to about 20 accounts and some 500 projects across Chennai.
Okay.
Right? So from this, and in between we also arranged some sessions for the leadership to see what was emerging from this. And it was very positive outcome. A lot of people felt the quality of ideas were very good. The people who participated felt very good about creating those assets. And everybody seems to be happy. They are sharing, no incentive, no structure, nothing, right? It seemed to work. So then I was reflecting on why this was happening. So it started by not asking a person first to write about his experience. See, talking about something is a relatively easier first step to do than directly saying you please write about it.
Okay.
Right? So it was probably easing that process. Second is because you are interacting, exploring, you are helping in that clarification of that thought process for that individual. And at the end of it, you are creating something which could actually add value to his CV. Now he feels like many people when they came, they said, we are doing a testing project, there is nothing useful in this. But after discussion, they could see that how this testing project related to the business impact for that particular client. Right? Why this project was being done by that client. You are reducing 10 days of testing time. How did it help that client? So when we establish these connections with the broader context of the client, they could see that they could go back to the client and talk to them. Right? So which automatically created more business opportunities for them. Right? So like this, these kind of multiple changes started happening. So, and a lot of paradoxes I had challenged in this whole process. Like for example, you are going and telling a so-called knowledge worker that knowledge is important.
Yeah.
Isn't that a paradox? Why nobody is even questioning that? So I ended up questioning some of these in a subtle way and created a process where listening to people as a first step, then naturally leading to consolidation of their experience and sharing of that experience. So this was the kind of experience which I had earlier as well.
Okay.
So that same perspective I brought into my classroom. Right? Saying that instead of assuming that student doesn't know anything or this thing, can we jointly explore? with whatever information we have and keep adding some information through that process of exploration, see where it goes, and keep realistic goals and take a call at different stages. And in between, you keep building some artifacts. That artifacts can play some role in creating that stickiness. So this is where that social and material connections start happening. So a network starts forming.
Right.
When that network starts forming and stabilizing, then this probability that something can emerge will start happening. Otherwise, if you look at a current education process, there is no conscious effort to develop a network through the program. Everybody does a course, exam, results, over, right? What kind of networks are students forming? Mostly personal friendships that they are forming outside the class, or, right? That is what. These connections are not based on some common artifact that is of interest to them. Other than maybe like they are part of a football team.
Yeah, right.
They come together.
Right.
And they keep remembering that. We are part of a cricket team, and 10 years later as alumni, when they come back, they will remember that.
Yeah.
They will remember their hostel room. But why can't they remember one artifact that they jointly created?
Yeah.
It could be a small proof of concept. That prototype lies in the campus, right? And other people see it, use it. This engagement, if you add into that process, it can build a lot more deeper connection.
So what do we change? I think that brings me to changes that you would want to propose, right? You've experienced, you've seen all of these microprocesses, how people learn, how they interact in this program. Let's start making some suggestions. What needs to change broadly in the education, but more specifically in the entrepreneurship creation process, or informing students more and more about the process of entrepreneurship during coursework? What do we need to change in the academic institutions?
Okay, so as part of CBD, the very core change we are attempting is, can you change the pedagogy?
Okay.
Every program, any academic program will have certain curriculum. So if you are teaching mechanical engineering, if you are teaching electronics, a person needs to know certain aspects of electronics and so on. But how you understand electronics, how you understand mechanical engineering, that is where real change has to come, right? So the current mode of discussion, which is I either use a presentation or go to the board and discuss some concepts and expect the student to understand the concept. This is at an information space.
Okay.
So you are essentially doing knowledge transfer and assuming that somewhere this knowledge will stick.
Yeah.
And then you do a test to see whether that knowledge is understood in that way or not.
Right.
There is no physical element involved in this whole process.
Okay.
Even if you go to a lab, labs are supposed to complement this. But even if I go from a theory class to a lab class, the lab class is more like, this is a machine, this is the experiment, this is the input, and that is the expected output.
Right.
I am not really tinkering with that machine in any way. Right? My interaction is very restricted. So it's a very limited kind of physical material engagement which is involved in this whole process. Now this is where you contrast this with a typical design education.
Okay.
There is a lot more physical material engagement in a design education compared to an engineering program. People work with materials, like I have to work with clay, I have to work with thermocol, I have to work with this. Then I have to spend a lot of time figuring out an equation with that clay, right? Even if I don't become a complete and artistic person in the best possible manner, but even to get a certain form, is the clay affecting you or you are affecting the clay? Right? So you need a different equation to engage.
Very interesting way of looking at it. So now I get a better idea of what you mean when you say material and interaction, socio-material interaction. When you are molding the clay, it is also molding your mind.
Right?
Okay.
So that process is very deeply ingrained in a design program. In a typical industrial design education, this is a lot more deeply ingrained. Whereas an engineering program, or even when we teach engineering design, it is treated as a cognitive problem solving process. It is like treated as a decision making process that is largely coming from the design theory promoted by Herbert Simon. Right? Now that is the pattern which we are trying to break. Saying that whatever course you teach, whether you teach physics, you teach chemistry or anything, all these courses originally, all these concepts emerged from some physical understanding. But after some time, the physical and abstract have got decoupled. So creating conditions where students can go back and touch those physical elements and rediscover this is what we are encouraging faculty to try and do. Right? So to give an example, say for example a workshop course. In a workshop course or a manufacturing process course, people can teach these are the 5 manufacturing processes: welding, cutting and joining and things like that.
Yeah.
And they can take them to a lab and say you do this welding. Instead, can you ask them, can you create a useful artifact using scrap material and this machining process that you learned?
Right.
So what we have seen in NIT Patna, so some students actually created small devices which can be used in their everyday context using the scrap material in their campus and applying the machining process. In the process, they also discovered this kind of material, this welding is not working.
Okay.
Right? Or we had to do, to get this exact 90 degrees, it was far more difficult for us to, they created some anti-gravity device. For that, a very simple device, but you need to get that angles very right for this to work. So they had to figure out the precision required in that to achieve. So when they do this, they are learning. They are also finding ways to connect the pieces around that to create a useful artifact,
Right.
which is the design aspect, which somebody has some use, understanding a user, right? And there is a potential for innovation because somebody has discovered there is a problem in welding this material. There is an interesting problem emerging there, a technical problem, which suppose there is a faculty also involved, he can recognize if there is a research potential in that.
Okay.
So this way you combine learning and innovation instead of treating it as teaching versus research.
Interesting.
Right? So
So pedagogical shift has to happen. We need to look at the learning processes differently instead of staying only at the information transfer. We need to, and if not information transfer, the next level that we are going to is exposing them to the physical world, to the material. But that interaction, even if we go to the third level of interaction between students and the materials, it is only to the level of uh, a restricted environment within which you are informed that you give this input, you do this processing, and you'll have this output. Rather, encouraging more creativity and letting them experiment with the material, which then would actually cognitively shape them as well.
yes.
That will change their understanding of material, that interaction, physical interaction. That's what I've understood is the idea that you're trying to convey. So that is a pedagogical shift that we want to do.
And what we have also said is, like, if you take a typical course of say 3 credit course, which will have say 40-45 sessions, you don't have to change everything overnight. You can start by designing 5 learning activities which can be implemented in that 1 hour session each. So you pick 5 sessions. It could be in the first 1 week I'll do 1 session, second week I'll do 1 session, like that. and design these activities where each activity promotes one quality. Like one activity can be purely around enhancing critical thinking.
Okay.
By creating situation where students are encouraged to reformulate problems. Right? So the example I gave you on earlier in terms of storing internet and so on. One activity can be around challenging divergent thinking.
Okay.
Right? So when we say new classes of products,
Okay.
that will emerge only when you keep pushing beyond the known categories. So getting to creating learning activities where within that same course concept, you create an activity which pushes them to come up with a very divergent idea for the same concept. Thereby you cultivate these behaviors, and across 4 or 5 courses, if students experience this, then it will become little more natural for them. Next time when somebody gives a problem or something, they may more naturally ask this question. And if this happens in the early stages, like in the first 2 years of an academic program, if students in say 4 semesters, at least in 7, 8 courses they experience this kind of thing, then you are creating conditions for more students to exhibit this curiosity, creativity and so on. When they come to advanced years, you can pick up those who have shown real interest and inclination. You pick only 5% of them and give them dedicated support for 1 year to take them through this kind of a design spine process. So we have suggested a series of say 6 workshops spread over a semester year, where they can go from ideation to a proof of concept. They work with external mentors. You provide them some small financial assistance to do field work, to do a POC and so on. These are all possible. Institutions have the small budgets they can easily create to facilitate this, right? Then you will see that repeatedly doing this process for about 3 to 4 years, you can definitely start seeing a different culture emerging. The real shift, when you say I have an innovation culture here, one way to understand that is, today if you ask students about any student showing a I want to be an entrepreneur, how will the rest of the students react to him?
Okay.
If you poll this, you can clearly see there will be a negative attitude towards it. A guy who probably gets a testing job for 10 lakhs will ridicule this guy. Right?
Okay.
That is the culture at a student's peer level. But when you say you have an innovation culture, maybe it should be something like this, which is the guy who has got a 50 lakhs package will look at this guy and say, I don't have the courage that you are having.
Okay.
Right? If that statement comes, maybe there is a...
That's the cultural shift that we want.
Because we want all of them to experience what it means to be creative. At the same time, appreciate the person who is taking this extra risk. Right? For whatever reasons you don't want to do it, is fine. But you start seeing the risk taker in a slightly positive light than looking at him as in a negative light.
Sure. So that brings me to my next question, which is, this person who probably is getting ridiculed by the peers. What is this person's mindset, the student's mindset, who is continuing this journey and saying, I'll try, I'll see what happens, I'll become an entrepreneur, or I'm exploring entrepreneurship. How are these people thinking? How are their peers reacting? You have briefly touched upon that. How is, faculty reacting, the institute reacting? How is the ecosystem supporting or not supporting, talking to this student?
That's what, to a large extent, you will find in today's environment, it's an extremely unsupportive and hostile environment. Right? So I can give example. Like for example, we had our own students who set up a company and are working in the incubator.
Okay.
So the rest of the juniors will look at them and say, why are you still here? Right? That's the, there are some PhD students who have started up with us. Their own faculty have called and told them, why are you wasting time in it? Why can't you get a job in an academic institution? Why, right?
Okay.
This kind of feedback is there. But the same thing shifts when the students raise a grant. Right?
Yeah.
We have seen the behavior changing.
Grant for the startup or
For
the
the
research?
startup.
For the startup. Okay.
So when these students won a Prayas grant or they got an external funding, then the same students are seen by others as
celebrated.
Oh, you're right?
Yeah.
So we have seen our own students go through that journey.
Okay.
Right, where initially they came and said, this is how I am, kind of peer pressure is there.
So then does that mean if we are teaching entrepreneurship, introducing entrepreneurial initiatives in the education, they should come with some money, some material, not necessarily reward, you will utilize it, but if it is there, then the perspective will change?
No, that is one element which creates more visibility, right? Because I have got some grant and I am hiring some intern, right? So these things definitely give some sense of this thing. But for the student itself, see, this is again some of the questions we also ask students or even faculty as part of the CBD program also. We ask faculty and students why somebody should not do an entrepreneurship or startup.
Why should someone not do entrepreneurship?
Right? Why should I waste time on this? Why I should not do? Give me reasons. So then like faculty typically give reasons saying students lack knowledge or skills, students lack financial resources, students lack the confidence, right? They don't know about the rules of incubation or procedures. They don't know about the market. Like this, multiple reasons are given.
Yeah.
But when you dissect these reasons, if a student lacks knowledge and skills, then what is your academic process doing?
Right.
If students lack confidence that they can solve a problem, what is your academic process doing? If a student lacks understanding of the outside market, what is your academic process doing? These are all things which can be solved in an academic process.
I think we underrate our students a lot. We treat them not as, we don't treat them very respectfully, to be honest. We say they're children, they're kids, they're immature, and we are always we become parents. When we are faculty, we become parents. Typically, traditional parenting
I have
has
seen this. I have seen this dialogue in one of the CBD workshops. We also arrange a session where we ask the faculty to just listen to some student ideas. So while we were doing this session, we had somewhere in North India, one of the faculty was saying, calling the student "bache," but right, literally, you don't know this, you don't know that. The word "bache" was being repeatedly used.
Yeah.
So then after the session, we had to tell them that these are part of the things which they need to slightly alter.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the soft component. That's the mindset, right? If you treat them more respectfully, more professionally, you raise their own standards, right? They would want to, dress up for the job that you want to be in, right? So you have to treat them, you are already an entrepreneur if you're thinking like that, and then they will start improving.
And there is also the other side. So this kind of dialogue is required for the early stage. The first 2 years when the student is not sure what it is and is exploring, your dialogue process should be more like joint exploration, reformulation. That talk should be more frequent. But after the student has expressed an interest, I want to do this, then you bring your technical rigor.
Okay.
You shoot down ideas which are meaningless.
Okay.
Right? So there it should be like more like an investor talk,
Okay.
because the student also needs to be prepared for the tough world outside where nobody is going to blindly accept what he's saying.
Sure. Sure.
Right? So faculty need to make that slight shift. In
Okay.
early stages, it should be a more open-ended exploratory kind of thing. After a student has expressed an interest, that's why we say that this 5% of students who are identified and are interested, they should be given a more rigorous interaction compared to the others. Right? So here it should be like, that's why in our own incubator it happens. Students who worked with me in the courses, when they come into the incubator in their internship time, they say you are behaving differently.
Yeah.
Right? So then I have to tell them that it's a different perspective that you need to get used to. You don't expect me to be like supportive in every statement that you are saying. You will also experience the world where people will not even listen to you.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you?
I was earlier talking to Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala, and he said a similar thing. His methodology is go out, charm students with the layers of entrepreneurship, right? Show them the best success stories, and they have come from here where you are studying. You can also do that. And when those students, 5 of them, raise their hand and come to him, he's like, you won't be able to do it. You don't have it in you. Go away, go away. Until they keep pursuing him. This initial failure of sir having rejected me now, he told us the stories. But if they make through this barrier and they persist and say, no, no, sir, I'll still do it, then you really become hard with them. Then you give them the rigor.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can relate to this idea. Interesting. So, how do we need to handle students is what we are discussing. The role of faculty, parallelly, we are discussing, they are in our hands, and rather than becoming, critiques or telling them what they don't know, they are students, right? They won't know. They are here to learn. So it's the responsibility of the institute and the courses, the education that we are imparting to them to build their confidence, knowledge, and skills. And then can they really become an entrepreneur really depends on the process which they will experiment during their course and so on. But another um, contradicting idea, which again Professor Ashok said, was until they are students, let them study. I don't want to talk to them. They want to become entrepreneur, finish your graduation, then come to me. What is your viewpoint on that?
Yeah. So what we are saying is, your actual starting a company can happen after graduation. But what you are doing through this process in the academic process is a lot of validation. Right? Can you reduce technical risk? Can you reduce the market risk? Right? These are the risks can you eliminate while you are in the academic process. You are anyway learning. Your learning will deepen through this process. But look at it as a process of elimination of all these risks. And at the end of it, you take a call whether you want to set up or not. And then if you don't have too much financial dependency after graduation, like somebody is expecting you to earn immediately and
Correct.
look after a family and others, then we say don't get into entrepreneurship, look for a job.
Okay.
With this experience of doing prototypes and all, your job profile should look
much
far higher.
Yeah.
Your dialogue with the employer should be far different compared to do you know basics kind of thing, right?
Yes.
That will definitely change. But if you don't have that dependency and are willing to look at 4 to 5 years of journey, then you take this call.
Okay.
So that is how we are positioning it, right? It is not forcing everybody to be an entrepreneur or anything like that.
So who is it, who is the entrepreneurship for? Who should really think that I can become an entrepreneur? What are the qualifiers?
It is not, that's what I said, it is not the particular behavioral trait of an individual that you can spot and then groom, right? It is you have to keep observing the network creation happening around people. whether there are some ideas and people and some prototypes, some networks which are emerging and stabilizing. Those networks where you see more stability, that is what you should try and support.
Interesting. You don't talk about one person, you talk about a network.
Yeah, because any startup is not one individual. You need minimum another co-founder for this to happen, right? And there should be some proof of concept which holds the attention of some stakeholders. Somebody has to join you, trusting you. Some team member has to join you. Some customer has to
So
connect.
there is a first level validation that has already happened. If there is a small network of 4 or 5 people.
Right. Network of people, and they have got some proof of concept coming through this process. You can start seeing that very visibly. The 5th, the 6th semesters, this will become visible.
Yeah.
Those networks you try to focus and support.
Okay.
Right. That way you create more meaningful.
Have you looked into this network? There are 4 or 5 people, but there must be one ringleader, other supporting players, and so on.
So that will be visible when you are talking to them at different stages. You will know who are those 2-3 people who are going to stay, who are just there for the purpose of that project. It will be there. Like even in these examples which I have told, these 2 people who finally formed that company, they're actually part of 2 different teams. And they kept working on different topics. But eventually they merged towards this topic after graduation.
What are the qualities of these individuals, who actually are the ringleaders, who are the entrepreneurs, right?
One quality very visibly is the persistence with that topic. Right? Whatever topic they have taken, they have persisted with that over the semesters. Right? And they have been able to bring in people who are willing to work on that same topic. So that is a very visible pattern.
Okay. What is not visible?
Not visible is a capability which is developing, but you cannot really see, it's difficult to this thing. So it actually came from a different perspective. Like what happened is when we were implementing this program after the first batch, or like first 6 years, we had a curriculum change in 2020. There, because of the academic changes, pressures and others, we had to reduce the percentage of design courses. So what was 17% was split into 10% compulsory and 7% optional. Or 7% is those who are interested can take that extra 7, but 10% will be compulsory for everybody. So when we did that, we also felt like in the 3rd semester when people were doing this problem identification, some preparatory work was required before they come to this. So we introduced a course in the 1st semester called Foundation Course for Engineering and Product Design.
Okay.
Most institutions have a course called Introduction to Engineering and things like that. On a similar lines, but this course was essentially to challenge behaviors of incoming students and give them a possibility to rediscover their creative side. So that course doesn't have any teaching component. It's a series of activities that they do in all the sessions. So it's like 3-credit course. So practically you'll have about say 14 sessions of 3 hours each. In each session they do about 3 or 4 activities. One could be a material activity, one could be a social activity, like that. And we assess each of these activities. Majority of the activities will be individual, not group activities. Only in the later stage some group activities will start emerging. When we did this, our challenge was at the end of this, can we see some change in creativity of the student? And we were struggling to find, we couldn't find anything visible changes. But we felt something was changing. What is that something, we couldn't really figure out.
Okay.
One signal we got was when in the previous cohort of the first 6 years, when students went into internship, we got a feedback saying both from students and the industry, saying we are able to deal with the ambiguity and uncertainty better compared to other students.
Okay.
This is one message we got. Second is both from industry and the students themselves. So when we implemented this new course, we were thinking, is that while creativity is not visible, but there is some change which is happening, right? We are not able to articulate. So then we thought maybe there is there tolerance for ambiguity improving?
Okay.
Then through some literature review, we found that tolerance for ambiguity is a very important trait
Okay.
for creativity, design, entrepreneurship. But it's not a externally visible property.
Right.
Right? If I can sharpen a knife, I can visibly show that.
Right.
If my tolerance for ambiguity has improved,
how do you see that?
How do you see? You cannot see that. But people interacting with them can notice. They themselves may not be visible. Again, they themselves may not realize, but somebody working with them may be able to realize. So there are some instruments to measure tolerance for ambiguity.
Okay. There are some scales?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we tried analyzing that. And what we could see is when students are put through this kind of activities and you bring more material engagement into that process, over a period of 1 year, there is an improvement in tolerance for ambiguity.
Okay.
Creativity and all may happen later if you persist with this. But tolerance for ambiguity seems to be improving. So that is what we felt these courses indirectly are doing. Many students who come back and say, no, we have not produced anything useful, we don't know why we did this. During the program, after they go back and join industry and they come back, they say, now we understand the importance of that course. So these feedbacks and all are essentially pointing that indirectly it is helping them prepare them for a little more complex environment. But it's not visible to them while they are in the academic program. It becomes visible sometime later.
We teach mathematics to everyone. We teach science. There's several compulsory courses. You're doing a BTech program or any other program for that matter. They're compulsory courses. Should entrepreneurship be taught to everyone?
Entrepreneurial behaviors are required. Whatever is the person. See, what is at the end of the day entrepreneurial behavior? It's an ability to sense an opportunity, mobilize resources and realize that. So whatever profession you are in, this is a very core quality of being very resourceful, very observant, able to explore an opportunity around you. So you look at it like that, that quality is required for everyone. Whether he starts a company or not is a different thing. So you separate out starting a company from the entrepreneurial behavior. This quality is required for everyone. Even if today you take a faculty, can
I was going to ask that.
Can a faculty survive without raising a project, without finding, right? He has to exhibit those behaviors. And that's why this is another thing which comes up is when faculty are asked to teach entrepreneurial courses and others, they come back and say, students are questioning us, you are not an entrepreneur, right? How can you teach me entrepreneurship? So then we had to tell them that, look, you are a PhD. What did you learn as a PhD? Going through a very uncertain phase and figuring out something. That is what you have really at the heart of PhD that you have grappled. There will be phases where you will feel why I am doing what I am doing, right? All that will come through and then finally you realize something. Leave out the monetary aspect, value creation, all that. But this core process of dealing with uncertainty is what you already have. You tell the students that that is very similar to what an entrepreneurial journey is also going to be. That's what I can share with you. Conversion of that to value creation is 2 steps forward. Right? So it is not that I don't know anything about
entrepreneurship, but it's a behavior and everyone needs it. I think whosoever has been successful in whichever way it is measured in their endeavors, you will see a proactivity, you will see risk taking, you will see, you know,
Yes.
them doing something that others won't do, mobilizing resources, like you said. So, entrepreneurship behavior is for everyone to learn. Who should do venture creation? There are some external circumstances, like you said, are others dependent on you for money, because creating a venture might lead to creating money much later. And if financially nobody is dependent on you and you can invest 4 or 5 years exploring an idea, maybe it is for you. Okay. So you have had very deep connect with the students. You've observed them, you've designed several interventions, and you've been helping faculty across 40 institutions come up with activities, you know, introducing 5 new activities in their courses to encourage entrepreneurial behaviors. Or you know, what have been some myths that you've had that have broken through this process about the students, about entrepreneurship, about faculty?
So
What
maybe can you?
what beliefs
Oh,
have you been able to change for yourself in the last 10 years?
okay. So first thing is I never liked teaching, right? In fact, when I finished my PhD, it was in systems and public policy and so on. A lot of people said you are probably more suited for teaching kind of thing, but I never felt I will be comfortable in a academic institution.
Okay.
Because
And therefore, after a PhD, you went to corporate.
I joined corporate because there was a center which was actually looking at public policy implementation and so on. So I joined that center.
Hmm.
So I wanted to work on actual, and most of management research, management is practice. So
Hmm.
closer to practice, you really understand
Hmm.
what it is. So that was my viewpoint, and my own inclination was research and consulting was more,
Hmm.
I was tuned to that than teaching.
Hmm.
But when I ended up in this role accidentally, so it was another accident which I came here. My whole reluctance for teaching probably pushed me to do all this experimentation.
Okay.
Because I couldn't imagine myself going into a class and teaching the same subject again and again every semester. So this institute's mandate of learning by doing, I took it seriously and then started asking, how can I enable learning without my having to teach?
Okay.
Right?
So you're going to classroom not to teach but to learn.
So that was the thing which
Orientation.
led to
Yeah.
this.
Okay.
Second is, uh, because of this appreciation of design, more the industrial design side of it, I now understand the value of material engagement a lot more than what I had earlier.
Okay.
See, my first phase of my work was like typical abstract engineering, abstract policy and all that. The next phase where I got into a lot of social relations, and now the material engagement part significantly shifted. And what I feel biggest thing is, today the need is for material engagement to precede the social and abstract.
Okay.
Right?
You first expose them through activities to
To
material and then tell them
then
what
the
is there to learn.
social, and then the abstract.
Okay.
That process of learning makes it more grounded, focused on local issues. All these can start happening only through that process. Otherwise, we probably cannot break the cycle which we are currently in.
Okay. Interesting. So material first, learning second, and then generalizing and abstract. Okay. What is your struggle right now with entrepreneurship education? What have you not understood? What have you not solved?
See, okay, this synthesis is still something which I am trying to articulate. That the design as a socio-material cognition.
Okay.
This is a synthesis that I am trying to figure out. it is very difficult to publish anything on this because there's no particular journal that will accommodate something like this, because the current journals have their own individual things, but more and more my own experience and working in this direction, I feel that kind of reorientation is required. I'll give you a simple example. Suppose you take something like driving. How do we understand driving, right? Much of the discussion, even if you look at the current vehicle design and others, they will start talking driving experience. Then how your interior dashboard should be, how the sound system should be, whether your touch screen, all this is the kind of direction. So in one sense, it is all treating driving as a cognitive activity. But really, is it driving cognitive activity? Do you see an object there, decide what is the distance, then calculate how much speed I should go, then you apply brake? You don't do that, right? Your whole body reacts to that situation in a much more, the body reacts to that situation, right? It is not, so there are certain alternative theories which try to explain this kind of behavior rather than the cognitive science models.
It's reflexive behavior, just reacting to situation.
No, not just reflexive behavior. Like for example, if you take a bus driver, right? This is a problem we are also trying to understand in the context of, for example, if you are today a lot of are moving from IC engines to EV buses. Take the simple task of stopping and starting a bus at a bus stand.
Right.
Stopping, both the buses could be very similar. EV bus could be slightly different because it has regenerative braking. Its behavior could be different. But starting, after you stop and you want to start, an ICE vehicle has its lag. The mechanical system has to operate and then the vehicle has to move, so there is a lag, right? Whereas in an EV, you have switch on, the torque is immediately there. A bus driver has to think not just about himself, his passenger status and the context around him. So if a typical IC engine bus, if I am starting, all the stakeholders are intuitively aligned that this vehicle is going to move and it will take this time to move, so their body postures, everything can get adjusted. Whereas in this vehicle, if I just press it immediately and this vehicle doesn't have sound, the person outside doesn't know how quickly it is going to come. The driver doesn't know how it is going to react. The passengers suddenly are pushed out of their status. So there is a shift happening in terms of all subtle things where the entire model could get disrupted in some way. So this requires a very deep understanding of how the body is tuned to this whole process. So if you take this perspective and start asking questions, what is that really I need to do to make this process more meaningful? I may end up with a different set of interventions, not the dashboard, not the kind of thing. So then the design can actually take a different direction. So that is what I am more concerned and trying to work on at this point of time.
Okay, that's deep. Yeah, I think the kind of work that you've been doing very closely with the students, and I'm most influenced by talking to 250 students, that too at the end of the course, when typically faculty can very easily switch off end of the course.
It takes one whole week.
That's a lot of bandwidth that you have to create and patience to listen. But advantage you had is you didn't want to teach, you wanted to learn.
I did that for the first 5 years, up to I think after pandemic it became, during pandemic we had to stop it because it became this thing, but until the 2019 batch or something I had done for everybody. After pandemic, when the class sizes increased, they became 400, 500, now it is 600. I have made it optional. So what I see is about 10% students do come and I discuss with them with the hope that this 10% will go and talk about this, because the one interesting thing happens when students come for this kind of meeting. There is a inherent curiosity created. What did he go and talk and what did he ask? So when they go out, everybody wants to know what you discussed and what he asked, so that they come prepared for that kind of questions. They don't know that I don't repeat the questions. I only go by what they are saying, right? So invariably, there is a gossip which spreads, but that gossip spreads a lot of these challenging questions that you ask.
Right.
So that way, some indirect effect may be there. I don't know. I cannot measure, but
So next time more people show up? More people sign up next time?
no, I've seen last 2 years, I've seen 10% come,
Okay.
talk and go kind of
And
thing.
so it may give them a little bit more peer status,
Ah.
that I went, I spoke, and
Whatever, but the same patterns I see in terms of opening up their assumptions and so on.
Okay. So let me, now bring this conversation towards the concluding section, where I want to ask you some sharp questions, which you can attempt answering a little more briefly. Of course, we could go on for much more. I have several questions. What do we, in the universities today, what do we misunderstand about student entrepreneurship?
Well, that's why I said it needs to be seen not as startup creation or something like that, but needs to be seen as, can we promote learning and innovation or entrepreneurial behaviors, right? That is where the focus should be. These qualities are required for everybody. Startups, maybe a few people will do, right? But the quality of entrepreneurial behaviors, everybody needs.
Okay.
So that is the shift which needs to come.
Can we discover entrepreneurs by design?
You can discover the networks. Network formation is what you have to pay attention to, not the individual nodes in the network. Where are these networks forming? And does that network have not just people, but are there physical artifacts in that network?
Okay.
So this network formation, if you keep paying attention, I think we will have a better way of recognizing potential startups.
Are entrepreneurs born or made?
I wouldn't go with that born logic or this thing. As I said, it is a network formation. Where network forms, people can take up this direction. So he need not have the trait or things like that. But if he's getting into a pattern of, there is a concept, there is another two people interested in that, then automatically some of these behaviors can change.
So then, is passion overrated? If you have the passion, you can become an entrepreneur. Here you're saying, through this process, they can discover a network and be part of.
So I will look at it like that. I am, my perspective, that's what it is, not focused on an individual and his attributes. It is focused on the kind of relationships which are emerging around the individuals. So wherever you see this pattern of relationships emerging, those are the networks that you can identify and pay attention to.
Okay.
And support them.
What would you want to change in the universities today? One thing.
There are too many things to be changed in a...
Okay, give me a wish list.
See, all institutions to a large extent are faculty centric, right? They can get into that mode. Now, getting them to shift from that towards student centric will be a big shift which is required. Second is being resourceful. If you ask a faculty, what is the issue? Immediately they will say, I need this equipment, this, right? And this will cost me so much. the idea of can I do something with what is available and convince stakeholders to get to the next step.
Right.
This resourcefulness is not built into that culture. That is another thing which needs to come in. If really entrepreneurial behaviors have to start nurturing. And institutions also need to build a lot more this flexibility in the academic process. Right? Like what we did, we created this interdisciplinary panel, these kind of small changes which need to happen. Classroom structures need to change to a large extent. Wherever you go, even in management schools, you are finding very rigid teaching classrooms. In fact, one of the IIMs that I recently visited, they have chairs which are bolted to the floor.
Okay.
Sorry, the tables which are bolted to the floor and the chairs which are welded to the tables.
Okay.
Where you can only rotate like this.
You can only move.
Right? And with nameplates. What kind of people are we building?
Okay.
Right? So the physical structures themselves are reinforcing a certain pattern of people. It needs to move out of that rigid structure towards more flexible working structures. Classroom structures need to change.
A lot of discussion that we had is okay in the context of a technical institution. What do we do in non-technical institutions?
So this is not only technical. So for example, in CBD, we have universities, central universities, we have some IIMs are there, right? This can be brought into any course.
But
that is how we are positioning it.
But they don't have, access to technical resources, welding, for example.
They don't have to do welding. They can do things which are related to their domain.
But material interaction.
Interaction can be done with simple artifacts, simple materials.
Okay.
They don't have to build sophisticated things. Like in one of the universities that we are seeing, they are finding that their non-engineering students are coming up with good ideas and working with the engineering students. So jointly they can still do something like that, right? So, but getting people to move out, connect with other people and things, that's the kind of shift which is really required.
Do we need Indian Institutes of Entrepreneurship?
You probably don't need a separate institute for entrepreneurship. That's what I'm saying. That will be required for the people who have expressed an interest in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
If you are giving them a very focused way, which like typically all this accelerators and all that do, if you want to create a program like that, but that is useful for people who already have shown an interest.
Okay.
Right? You have like IIT Madras had this MS in entrepreneurship program, right? Where people join and they actually build their venture as part of the program. But that is required for people who have already shown that inclination. But for people to nurture this quality, you need to do it in all the places.
Okay. It has been an intense experience talking to you over the last couple of hours. I have discovered many new patterns, some things that I have not heard before actually, and at the micro level, at the implementation level, which is what I really appreciated about this conversation, that in a semester, in a course, what do I need to do? Or several other faculty members who are passionate about taking entrepreneurship design to the class. Focus on the process, facilitating more than instructing, uh, teaching less and letting students do more, and then bringing them back to tell you what they have learned actually powers us to learn more about them. And through that process, we're trying to create a socio-material interaction, which is another revelation for me. And when you said it has to be material interaction first for the students, and from there they learn, and from there you derive an abstract or a theory for them to say this is how the world works. You've experienced in a very specific manner. And another very interesting idea that I got from this conversation is network formation. You're not looking at an entrepreneur as an individual, which has been an idea that I've been taking along, all this time. That this is one guy who attracts resources, mobilizes. Yes, there is one, but the way you are looking at identifying such people is by looking at those networks. So creating those networks, that ecosystem of very small uh, group, that is also very interesting for me. And overall, I feel like this is a conversation which is, of course, not directly focused on students, but for faculty. And all the students are influenced by faculty, primarily, you day in, day out interface with faculty. So from that viewpoint, I think the kind of information that we have brought out through this conversation, hopefully it benefits the faculty members in creating a mindset shift, and also for universities in thinking differently about education, in thinking differently about the students, their learning process, how they learn can be facilitated by merely sitting down and listening to them, by only enabling them, which can be very powerful, and not necessarily keeping hard boundaries and letting them explore more, being creative, letting them interact with the material, and breaking the disciplinary boundaries, and relaxing our minds as to if I'm in physics, then only physics has to happen in this project. So thank you so much, Dr. Sudhir Varadarajan, for taking time and sharing all these insights, which have I'm sure this is going to be a great resource for the faculty, as I said earlier, to learn from all of this. Of course, you're doing great work across the country through CBD program to help institutions embed the design element into their programs. But through this conversation, hopefully, we'll disseminate to many, many more faculty members.
Thank you, Dr. Puran, for this nice interaction. And also, I should thank the Ministry of Education for giving me this opportunity to handle the CBD program, which also took me to different parts of the country which I have not visited, met so many people and others. We also came up with a very interesting series of Hindi songs through which we can explain that CBD program.
Okay. Would love to have, we can also share that playlist with our faculty. Love to see that. Great. Thank you so much once again for joining us for Guest India podcast. Once again, we bring to you a very interesting conversation for me, for sure. There were many new learnings which I could have, having taught entrepreneurship for quite a bit and having interacting with several entrepreneurs, and now last couple of years invested in student entrepreneurship. These are very interesting ideas which I will sort of explore more and see how we can implement that.
Thank you.
Thank you.